The golden sun of Eziama village rose slowly that morning, spreading its warm light over the farmlands, palm trees, and the red earth paths that led to the stream. The air smelled of fresh dew and roasted yam from distant kitchens. Birds sang sweetly on the iroko trees, and the people of Eziama were already awake, ready to face another busy day. Farmers carried their hoes and baskets on their shoulders as they headed to their fields. Women tied wrappers tightly around their waists as they went to fetch water or fry gari. Even children helped by carrying firewood or chasing goats away from the cassava gardens. But while everyone in Eziama was awake and busy, one man was still snoring loudly in his small hut near the edge of the village. His name was Oka. Oka was a tall man with sleepy eyes, a round face, and a belly that rested on his lap whenever he sat. He was known across Eziama not for his strength or wisdom, but for his laziness. People often called him Oka the lazy farmer, and he never argued with them. Instead, he would laugh and say, "Let others sweat. Me, I use my head, not my hands." Many years ago, Oka's father had been one of the richest farmers in Eziama. His yam barn was always full, and he often helped neighbors with food when famine came. But when the old man died, Oka inherited the land, and that was when the problems began. The once green farm was soon taken over by weeds and anthills. The ridges flattened, and wild grass grew taller than a man's waist. Oka always promised to clear the farm tomorrow, but that tomorrow never came. That morning, his wife, Neka, stood by the door with her hands on her hips. She had been calling Oka since the cock crowed, but he was still sleeping. "Oka," she shouted again, "the sun is climbing, and you're still lying like a dead log. Other men are already at their farms." Oka groaned and turned on his mat. "Neka, just 5 more minutes," he muttered. 5 minutes? She said sharply. "You said the same thing before sunrise. It's now late morning. Do you want this house to starve again?" Oka yawned loudly and scratched his beard. "We still have yam in the barn," he said. Neka's face tightened. "Which yam? The one your brother gave us 2 months ago? Even that one is almost finished. Look outside. Mazi Okeke has already planted maize, and Obi's children are weeding the beans. You haven't even touched your land." Oka stretched lazily and said, "Let others sweat. Me, I use my head, not my hands." "By what?" Neka snapped. "You owe everyone in this village. You even owe the palm wine tapper." Oka sighed and turned over again. Woman, must you always talk like a market gong? I need peace to think." "Peace?" she repeated angrily. "You call sleeping all day peace? When hunger knocks, you'll think with your stomach." Before she could say more, their little daughter, Amaka, came in holding an empty pot. "Mama, there's no food again," she said softly. Neka looked at Oka with frustration. "You see? Even your child knows hunger. But keep sleeping. Maybe food will grow inside your dreams." Oka mumbled something under his breath and covered his face with his arm. By midday, when the sun burned fiercely over Eziama, Oka finally stood up. He stretched like a man who fought a lion in his sleep. Then he picked up his hoe and walked slowly to the field. When he reached his father's land, he stopped and sighed. The once beautiful farm was now a forest. Thick grass and stubborn weeds had taken over. Birds hopped around freely, feeding on leftover cassava. Oka leaned on his hoe and said to himself, "This land is too big. I can't do it all today. Let me rest first and start small." He sat under a mango tree. The cool breeze made him close his eyes. Within minutes, he was snoring again. The sun began to set, painting the sky orange and gold. Other farmers were returning home, carrying baskets full of vegetables and tubers. Oka woke up, yawned, and dusted his wrapper. "Tomorrow," he said. "I'll start tomorrow." But the same thing happened the next day, and the day after that, and the week after that. Ineka grew tired. She started selling her beads and wrappers just to buy gari. Sometimes she borrowed food from neighbors. Their daughter Amaka stopped going to school because they couldn't afford for her books anymore. Yet Oka continued to sleep and dream of big plans. One afternoon, a town crier went around Eziama beating his gong. Kong, kong, kong! All men of Eziama, gather at the village square tomorrow. The chief has a message. The next morning, the men assembled under the big udala tree at the square. Chief Eziama stood before them wearing his red cap and holding his staff of office. My people, he said, the harvest festival is near. As our custom demands, every household must bring a portion of their farm produce as tribute to the gods. It is a sign of gratitude. The crowd nodded, but Oka's face fell. He had nothing to bring. That evening, Ineka asked him, "What did the chief say?" Oka scratched his head. He said everyone must bring crops to the palace for the festival. And what will you take? Air? Ineka asked. Don't worry, Oka replied quickly. I'll find something. That night, when the moon rose and the village became quiet, Oka picked up a basket and crept out. He tiptoed through the bush path until he reached Obi's farm. Obi was known for his fat yams. Oka grinned and said to himself, "Just 2 or 3 yams and I'll be fine." He began digging carefully, humming a tune. But before he could lift the 3rd yam, something snapped around his ankle. In a flash, a rope pulled him up, hanging him upside down from a tree branch. He screamed, "Help! Help me!" Obi and his brothers, who had set the trap for thieves, came running with lanterns. When they saw Oka swinging in the air, they burst into laughter. Ah, Oka, my lazy farmer. So this is your midnight farming. Oka struggled. Please, my brothers, cut me down. I was only checking your crops. Checking? Obi said, laughing. You wanted to check them into your basket. They tied him properly and dragged him to the chief's compound. When Eziama saw him, he shook his head. Oka, you've brought shame to Eziama. Instead of working your own land, you chose to steal from others. You must pay for this. Oka knelt down and begged, "Please, forgive me. I was desperate." The chief raised his hand. You will work for the community until the harvest festival ends. Every morning, you'll join the young men to weed and till the communal land. Let this teach you that the gods bless only those who work. The next day, Oka was taken to the communal farm. The guards made sure he didn't run away. At first, he grumbled and worked slowly, wiping his sweat every few minutes. But as days passed, something changed in him. He began to notice how the soil smelled rich and alive, how the green leaves danced in the wind. When he harvested his first basket of maize, a strange joy filled his heart. For the first time in many years, he felt proud of himself. By the end of the season, Oka's body had changed. His belly was smaller, his arms were strong, and his back no longer ached from sleeping all day. People in Eziama noticed. One morning, Eziama called him again. Oka, what have you learned? Oka bowed his head. I have learned that laziness is a curse. A man who sleeps while others work will wake up in hunger. The land only rewards the hands that till it. The chief smiled. Good. Go and rebuild your life. When Oka returned home that evening, Neka and Amaka ran out to welcome him. He showed them the yams and vegetables he had harvested himself. This time, he said proudly, I worked for it. And Neka's eyes filled with tears. Now I see my husband again. From that day, Oka became a different man. He woke up before dawn, sharpened his hoe, and went to the farm while others were still stretching. The villagers would smile and say, Eziama has witnessed a miracle. Oka the lazy farmer is no more. Now we have Oka the wise. And indeed, Oka never missed a sunrise again. The next season in Eziama village began with great promise. The rains came early, and the soil was soft and dark like fresh palm oil. Oka, who had now become one of the most hardworking men in the village, cleared his farmland before anyone else. He built neat ridges, planted yams, maize, and groundnuts, and sang as he worked. The same villagers who once mocked him now admired his strength. Even children ran after him, shouting, "Oka the wise, Oka the strong." Oka would laugh and wave his hoe in the air. Life had changed for him, and so had his family's fortune. His wife Neka looked happier and fuller, and little Amaka now wore clean clothes and returned to school. Their compound smelled of roasted maize and palm soup once again. But as life began to shine bright for Oka, trouble slowly crept into Eziama. It started when the rain suddenly stopped. The clouds disappeared, and the sky turned white and dry. For 1 week, the villagers waited for rain. Then another week passed. By the third week, cracks began to form on the farmlands. The yam vines turned yellow, and the river began to shrink. Oka stood on his farmland one afternoon, staring at the sky. "This can't be," he muttered. "The gods can't allow all this work to waste." Other farmers gathered at the stream to talk. "The rain has abandoned us," said Obi, the man whose farm Oka once tried to steal from. "If this continues, we'll lose everything." Elder Nwoke nodded. "We must go to the chief. Only he can call the elders to consult the gods." That evening, the gong sounded through the village. "Kapum, kapum, kapum. All men of Eziama, gather at the palace." When they arrived, Chief Ezimadu stood before them with a serious face. He said, "My people, the gods are silent and the land is dry. We must find the cause of their anger." The oldest priest, a wrinkled man named Dibia Anene, stepped forward. He spread white chalk on the ground and threw some cowries. After chanting softly, he said, "The gods are angry because the people have become proud. They no longer share their blessings. The land will remain dry until a heart of kindness waters it again." The crowd murmured in confusion. "What does that mean?" one man asked. "It means someone must show great kindness," Dibiangene replied. "When one person's heart shines brighter than the sun, the sky will open again." The people looked at each other. No one spoke. Everyone was thinking of their own farm and how to save it. That night, Oka couldn't sleep. He sat outside, watching the stars. He remembered his own life, how lazy he once was, how hunger taught him humility, and how the chief had helped him change. The next morning, while others complained about their drying crops, Oka took a bold step. He began fetching water from the stream, what little remained, and carried it to his farm in clay cots. It was hard work. The sun burned his skin and sweat poured down his face. But he refused to stop. "Look at Oka," some villagers said. "He thinks he can water the whole farm with pots?" But Oka didn't answer them. Day after day, he fetched water from the stream and poured it on his crops. He even watered the small farms of widows and old men who couldn't fetch water for themselves. Soon, children joined him. "Let's help Oka the Wise," they shouted, carrying small gourds of water to the fields. By the 5th day, something strange happened. A cool wind began to blow from the east. The sky darkened, and a soft rumble rolled across the clouds. The villagers looked up and shouted, "Rain! Rain is coming!" Within minutes, heavy rain poured down on Eziama. The dry land drank eagerly. Farmers ran out laughing and dancing under the water. When the rain stopped, Ezimadu sent for Oka. "Oka," said the chief, smiling proudly, "you have done what even elders could not. Your kindness moved the heavens. The gods have seen your heart." Oka bowed. "I only did what I felt was right, my chief. The land feeds us all. If one man's farm dies, it affects everyone." The chief nodded. "Because of your wisdom, I will make you the leader of the village farmers. You will guide the young men and teach them the value of hard work."
That announcement spread through Eziama like wildfire. The man once mocked as lazy had become a leader. From that day, people began to seek Oka's advice. One young man, Chike, came to him and said, "Oka, teach me how to work like you. I don't want to waste my life like before." Oka smiled and said, "Then wake before the cock crows. Respect the soil. It may look quiet, but it listens. When you plant with care, it rewards you with joy." He began training young farmers in groups. Every morning, the sound of hoes and laughter filled his farm. Even the birds seemed to sing louder there. But Oka's journey of change wasn't over. One afternoon, as he worked, a stranger arrived in Eziama. He was a tall man wearing dusty clothes and carrying a small bag. He looked weak and hungry. The villagers whispered among themselves, "Who is this stranger? Where did he come from?" The man introduced himself as Nduka, a traveler from the faraway village of Obinagu. "I lost my way and my food," he said softly. "Please, can someone give me shelter?" Most people turned away. The drought had made everyone selfish. But Oka looked at him and saw himself from years ago, poor, tired, and hopeless. He said, "Come with me, brother. You'll rest in my home." And Duka stayed with Oka's family. Neka gave him food and Amaka shared her mat. Days passed and Nduka recovered. But one morning, he told Oka something surprising. "My friend, you have shown me great kindness. I am not an ordinary traveler. I am a messenger of the gods, sent to test the hearts of men. The sky opened again because of your compassion, and the land will remain blessed because of it." Oka was shocked. "You mean you're one of the gods' messengers?" "Yes," Nduka replied. "You have proven that hard work and kindness are the true sacrifices that please the heavens. From today, Eziama will never see famine as long as your name is remembered." With those words, the man disappeared into the morning mist. When Oka told the villagers what happened, they were amazed. Ezimadu called a special meeting and said, "From now on, the gods of Eziama shall be called Oka's witness, for they saw the transformation of a lazy man into a savior of the land." Every year after that, during the harvest festival, the people of Eziama sang songs of Oka. Children would dance and shout, "Work hard like Oka, be kind like Oka." And whenever the first rain of the year fell, old Neka would look up at the sky and whisper, "The gods remember." As for Oka, he never grew proud. He continued working with the same humility that saved his village. When his hair grew gray, he would sit under the same mango tree where he once slept lazily, telling young boys stories of his past. "My sons," he would say, "the soil is like life. If you don't plant effort, you won't harvest anything. A man's hands are his best inheritance." And they would listen with shining eyes, inspired by the man who once slept through the sunrise, but later learned to rise before it. The end. Don't forget to like, comment, and share.